seeing Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, announcing that the EU, I'm just reading here the quote, will ban Russian media outlets, that's RT and Sputnik, accusing us of spreading harmful disinformation. We try our best to put a balance across. We're licensed by Ofcom in the UK and Europe. They've deemed us to be OK to license. We are, of course, going to put the Russian point of view. What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with it is that it's totalitarian. You don't suppress media outlets. That's a basic principle. If the EU is going to suppress RT and Sputnik, that means European Union citizens will no longer be able to watch those channels. No one forces them to watch them. It is a measure that she has announced which drastically reduces the liberties of EU citizens. I'm sure it doesn't make a slightest bit of difference to Russia. But it does make a difference to people who want to watch RT and Sputnik. And I mean, we've got used to totalitarianism for 2 years now with all the COVID madness. But this is in the same category. In any case, what laws is she claiming to be operating under? The EU doesn't have that authority. Any more than it has the authority, by the way, as far as I know, to close airspace, as you mentioned in your report.
So we'll come to that in a minute. I suppose you can still watch us at RT.com on a live section. You can watch the television feed. We'll be broadcasting to most of the rest of the world. But, how soon do you think this is going to come in? It was expected.
Maybe it was, but I am above all, independently of the issue between Russia and NATO and Ukraine, I think anyone watching this, any European citizen watching this, should be deeply preoccupied by the assault on his own rights, his or her own rights. You mentioned just now in your report from London about the seizure of assets belonging to Russian oligarchs in London. Well, what happened to due process? What happened to property rights? Are we really saying that from one day to the next, somebody's property can be taken away just because they're deemed to be politically close to Russia? This is literally dictatorship. I don't want to sound hysterical, but somebody has to pull the alarm bell on this and say that these kinds of measures undermine the very thing which the British government and other European governments claim to be standing for, namely the rule of law and democracy.
It's an horrific situation from everyone concerned in Ukraine on all sides. The West, though, is talking about wanting peace to try and find diplomatic way forwards. At the same time, we're hearing a raft of new money and new arms coming in there. Is it going to calm things down or make it worse?
Well, there's no sign at all, as you know, of any meaningful political dialogue, because on the contrary, as you've just said, the British and others, the European Union, has promised to send more arms. It was interesting, by the way, that the Americans a day ago, I think yesterday, said they were prepared to take Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, out of the country. That perhaps was in order to prevent him from meeting the Russians, as he is now going to do, or at least his representatives are going to do very soon.
Yeah, so there is a meeting penned, hopefully, for later on this evening on the Belarus border. Do you think it's too soon for anything sensible to be brokered here?
No, I wouldn't say that. My strong hope is that it will lead to some kind of progress. I mean, as you know, and I'm sure your viewers know, Zelensky said, I think 36 hours ago, that he was prepared to meet, even to discuss neutrality. If that were to prove true, then the war could be over, I'm sure, in a very short period. I don't know how he would manage to sell that when he gets back to Kiev, but he said it, and now he seems to be going, or at least sending representatives. So that's a good sign. So but I don't want to predict anything.
The White House says tonight that Russia is reacting to a threat that doesn't exist.
Well, that's ridiculous. NATO is the most powerful military alliance in the history of humanity. Its expenditure dwarfs that of Russia. Its power dwarfs that of Russia. How can anyone say, after these decades of NATO's wars in Yugoslavia and Libya, that it's not a threat to anyone, particularly when the British Foreign Secretary, Britain is one of the most important NATO powers, seems to imply that Moldova is part of NATO. Moldova is not part of NATO. She also says we have to fight for Ukraine because otherwise we will be threatened. Well, NATO does not have to fight for Ukraine. NATO has to fight for its member states. It doesn't fight for other countries. It fights for its member states. So everyone is losing their heads at the moment. And therefore, it's entirely understandable that Russia should be raising the stakes in this way because on the
4 days
NATO
into this hellish situation, final 30 seconds, what do you think is the next step?
Well, as I say, I very much hope that there will be a meeting, whether it is this evening or tomorrow, very soon, and that it will lead to some kind of de-escalation. But right now, I think it would be a very foolish person who would predict anything, because I'm afraid we've entered very, very uncharted waters at the moment, where each piece of news is surprising us.